My next guest takes no prisoners. She's an Asian bombshell. She's young, she's bold, and she has been retweeted by no one less than the President of the United States. Welcome to another episode of Conversations. This is a show where we talk about anything and everything and whatever's on my mind. And today we're going to be talking about the Stop the Hate Against Asian American campaign. My guest today is a young woman who is an influencer, Danielle Rae. She has drawn quite a bit of attention because she's outspoken about the hypocrisy and some of the things that are not being said about Asian Americans and their place in American society. So help me to welcome Danielle Rae to the show Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you have been quite the troublemaker recently.
I guess you could call me that. That's one way to put it.
And so, you know, I understand that you are not behaving very well. Like, Asians are supposed to be model minorities, and that means they're supposed to be nice and they go along. They don't make any waves. What's this about you not being on board with the agenda? Did you miss your talking points?
Well, I actually think it's the other way around. See, I think I am being a model citizen and a model Asian, and I'm just trying to, you know, have peace and live my life. And all the other liberal Asians, they're the ones making the stir. They're the ones saying, hey, we're not going to be the model Asians, and we're not going to submit, we're not going to play along. So I see myself as more of the Asian should be, if that makes sense.
I agree. And I can tell you, the first time I met rowdy Asians, it was at Princeton University when the Asian students, I think, took over the president's office or something because they wanted a center. And so that was totally out of character for Asians as the model minorities.
Yeah, that really is true. And I feel like it's mostly too because you have the immigrants who come here, like my mother, so you have that generation, but then you have my generation that went to public school, and then they went to the Ivy League schools, and they became indoctrinated. And so, you know, we're more American. We don't identify as much with the Asian culture, but, you know, they want to pretend to.
Right, and this stereotype about Asians being model minorities and citizens, could you tell our viewers, the people that are not familiar with it, you know, what that stereotype is? And I can also, after you do that, I'll tell you what I hear from Asian parents.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. So typically in Asian community, well, I should first say, the Asian community is not as monolithic as people think that it is. We are all very, very different, from all the way from Koreans, Japanese, and then especially Filipinos and Vietnamese. They're different. They're all different, right? So I'm Chinese, and most Chinese, I should say Gen X, and maybe a little bit of Gen Y Asians are typically sort of apolitical. Most Asians just want to do their job. They come to America, they look for a better life, they try to give their kids the best life possible, and so a lot of Asian kids are sort of fed from a silver spoon. They get the best education possible, they have all of the extracurricular activities that they can because their parents are trying to give those opportunities. And for the most part, if you talk to Gen X Asian parents, they're more like, oh, you know, I kind of sometimes know what the news is, I kind of keep up sometimes, or they may not keep up at all. A lot of times they won't even vote, and actually a lot of Asians didn't vote until the election of Donald Trump.
Right, right. And some of us, you know, may be familiar with Tiger Mom.
Yes, yes.
And the fact, you know, that Asian parents have very much focused on achievement. Mm-hmm. And, you know, without stereotyping you, and we're friends, I mean, you play the cello, right?
And cello and piano.
And so, you know, and a lot of Asian parents, that's part of the education is that children play a musical instrument. And they Asian, and I'm not stereotyping, this is factual, Asian children study more hours than whites or blacks, and that's one reason why they are at the top. When they apply to colleges and universities, they tend to have the highest scores. And I find it very interesting that with this Stop the Hate Against Asian campaign that the Democrats are using to distract, the population, they are discriminating against Asian Americans when it comes to college admissions, because if they actually admitted people based on the scores, the Asians, would, they would pretty much have all the top slots or a significant percentage. So they're really being discriminated against all across the country. That's the real issue.
Yeah, they're being discriminated against legislatively. I don't think they're discriminated as much against culturally. And I think the Stop the Asian Hate, they want to take what they see as cultural discrimination and they want to legislate it. And I think that's the thing that's not happening.
But they're not dealing with the
but
discrimination
they're not
with college.
Yes.
They're making it seem like that all of these people are going out and committing hate crimes against Asians, and they want to frame it as if these, the hate crimes are being committed by conservatives and Trump supporters and that type of thing. And I know that you've tweeted out something that challenged that view about who's committing the crimes.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you look at the statistics, nobody wants to look at the statistics, right?
Of course not. We can't deal with facts.
And it's really hilarious to me, and as frustrating as it can be, I have to laugh all the time, because the whole Stop Asian Hate campaign, you cannot subscribe to that belief, that hashtag and that movement, unless you negate Black Lives Matter. You can't have both. You can have Black Lives Matter or Stop Asian Hate, because most of the crimes committed against Asians are by Black people, African American people, and you can't escape that fact. And I don't even like to bring that up, because in the long run, and in the larger scheme of things, it doesn't even make a difference, because there's not that many crimes committed against Asians, period. In 2019, which is I think the most recent data we have, a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, there was over 7,000 hate crimes committed against Asians. Number one, we can't prove they're hate crimes. Number two, you know how many Asians lived in America in 2019? Over 5 million. 7,000 crimes out of 5 million people. It's less than 0.1%. It's such a small percentage. But if you want to look at it, if you really want to break it down, 23% of those crimes are white people. 27% are committed by Black people.
Well, we can't deal with that.
No, because Black Lives Matter. So we're going to, just erase that.
I wonder if it's racist to say, they say it's racist to say white lives matter. It's racist to say all lives matter. Now that they have the Stop the Hate Against Asians, can you say Asian lives matter?
Well, apparently now. That's basically what they're saying. I saw, actually, it was a Korean conservative influencer, and he made a video that went viral, and it was this TikTok, and he was doing this little skit, and he said, Black Lives Matter, Asian lives matter,
white lives
Pacific
don't matter
lives
so
matter.
much.
And then he was like, wait a second, so all lives matter? That's what we've been saying all along.
It would be great if movements like that were motivated by true concern, by human beings and not for political purposes.
Yeah, and it actually breaks my heart to see how many of my generation of Asians have been so swooped up by the left. And that's why I tweeted out, I said, congratulations, you've been deceived, It's because I think we didn't learn from our parents what we were supposed to learn, which is not to take anything for granted, to work hard for what we want. But now there's this new generation of brats, essentially, because, and it's sort of the fault of their parents, but it was an unintentional consequence of their parents trying to give them the best life ever, to give them the best opportunities ever, but now they just see themselves as another group of victims, which hurts the entire group.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate that we have this kind of situation. You were retweeted by President Trump. What was the tweet that he decided he would retweet?
So that actually happened last spring, coming up in May. I think it was like May 20th, actually. It was the day before my birthday.
The day before your birthday?
Yes. It was the craziest thing. So a bunch of my friends, I think you met Bryson Gray.
Right.
His girlfriend Shekinah and some other people, we all went to a cabin trip, and they had bought matching MAGA onesies. And so they took a picture with their guns, and they posted that. I quote tweeted it.
Right.
And I said, you'll never know these people are as real in real life as they are on social media. And then I started getting there was a couple days later, we had gone home and we were driving somewhere, and I got in the car and all these people were DMing me like, oh my gosh, you're retweeted. And I guess it just didn't cross my mind. I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about. Then we went on Twitter, and at the time, I never used Twitter. That was probably one of my first tweets I ever put out. And then I guess he retweeted it. And it was crazy because we all got to sort of benefit from that.
Well, you have certainly grown your platform as an influencer.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and when we return, I want you to share with our audience a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay.
We'll be back after this word from my sponsor.
Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain is made possible by Cooper Steel, a family-owned business that provides the steel fabrications for some of the greatest buildings across the United States. 60 years ago, Kenneth and Faye Cooper founded their company in Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Cooper Steel believes in sponsoring Carol Swain because we believe as she does, you build strong, you stand strong.
What started as a vision and now a nationally recognized and operated company that remains true to its founders' Judeo-Christian values and principles. Cooper Steel is committed to excellence, responsibility, and community. Cooper Steel's motto is, build strong, stand strong. They treat their employees and customers like family. Thank you to Cooper Steel for standing strong with Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. Learn more about our generous sponsor at coopersteel.com.
I'm back with my guest, Danielle Rae. Danielle, tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I was raised by Asian mom, Chinese mom. She's an immigrant here. She immigrated when she was, I think, 26, or maybe 24, 25, and a white dad who's actually from the Nashville area. I was raised in a conservative, I'd say Republican home. I was raised in a Christian family. And then around middle school, I sort of developed an interest in politics because I did speech and debate. So that was sort of my first introduction.
In middle school?
Yeah, in middle school.
What was your first debate?
So I was actually 10, so I guess a little before middle school. And the resolution at the time was we should reform our space policies. So we were debating NASA and SpaceX, and should we fund NASA or should SpaceX be the way to go? So that was my first debate introduction, I guess.
And so tell us more about, that upbringing and how that has shaped how that's helped you become who you are today.
Yeah, so I think something that differentiates me from most other Asian kids was I was homeschooled, mostly because that was my dad's idea. My mom didn't know what homeschooling was when she came to the States. So I think that definitely shaped me differently than a lot of kids who went to public school. Number one, I was indoctrinated. And so I never could fall to the ideology of the left and that whole victim mentality. My mom, I would say, is mostly kind of stereotypical Asian, but my dad sort of balanced that out. So it kind of worked out that I'm in music because my dad was a musician and my mom obviously wanted us to learn the piano. And so we were always musical. And she definitely encouraged us to work really, really hard. Like, A's were good, but A pluses were better.
Was she a tiger mom?
She will say that she's not a tiger mom. I think a lot of my American friends would say she's a tiger mom, but like compared to the actual tiger mom, Amy, she's nowhere near that level. I mean, because
Amy's been canceled, I think, at Harvard.
I'm sure she has. I mean, that's unacceptable. Like, how dare you treat your children like that? But my dad was pretty balanced, and so he definitely valued playtime and exploring nature, and so we did a lot of fishing, a lot of hunting, hiking. We traveled the country a lot. So, I mean, I feel like I got the best of both worlds. I had my mom, and not that my dad didn't encourage me to work hard, but it's a little different. My mom is very heavily focused on academics, and I think that has partially given me the appreciation for the education that I had, because I look at education in the public school system and I'm like, thank God I never had that. I was never educated on racism. I never had social justice education. But we learned to work hard. And when it came to college, my parents were like, if you want to go to college, you have to get a good scholarship. So, we took the ACT over and over and over. So we were always raised to work hard and to value family and to value faith. And I think with that came patriotism. And we weren't necessarily, like, I guess, more country kids who were, patriotism was drilled into us. It was just this appreciation of never take anything for granted. You live in a country where you're free, and that is a blessing, and use that blessing for God's glory.
And now, you go to a big public university. What is it like, being a conservative?
So I'm in a business major. I'm a marketing major, so I feel like I don't really experience it as much as other people I know. I know other people I know who are studying law.
I mean, this critical theory is everywhere. Aren't you
Right.
learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice?
A little bit, but I also take online classes, so I pretty much finesse all of that. I'm sure if it was in class, it would be more, and I know people who have experienced that. But I never study for my classes. Don't tell my professors that.
So you're breaking the stereotype, because a real Asian would be hitting the books hard, right?
So I did start out that way because I was an accounting major, so I had to be in the books. But then I think as my career, I guess, changed into more of politics and creating content, I just basically changed my major to something that I could just finish school with. So I don't really care that much. The thing about it is, what I've learned from school is that it's practically useless. You're right, they don't teach you anything but critical race theory anymore. I was in a class that was literature and translation, and all that class was trying to teach us that Muslims are, overly stereotyped, and Muslims are super nice people. I'm not saying they aren't, but it was a whole agenda of America's racist.
Well, I also know that you were recently working 2 jobs, 2 service-oriented jobs, and that you have your own career as an influencer, and that you're also doing some work for me.
Yes.
And so, you may not be totally 100% focused on the books, but you're balancing a lot of different things, including some care of your family.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that just goes back to our parents raising us to work hard, and if we want something, then we need to get it, My dad, when he was 18, he moved out. He worked for a pizza company, and he moved to a whole different state, and he really had nothing, and he was very, very poor for a long time. So I think we were just raised with that same ethic, and, I had a conversation with actually Charlie Kirk's fiance that really did encourage me to change my career, and I just took some of her advice.
Change it in what sense, if you can go into that
Well,
detail.
so before that, I was accounting major, right? And I really
So
did.
you're going to be a CPA?
Yes, that was my plan. Study, get the 120 hours, get my CPA. And I really didn't like it.
Well, you're
as an
Asian, so I'm
child-
sure you would have been very good with numbers.
No, actually.
I'm stereotyping again.
I wish I was. I struggled so much in math growing up. Like, I had these fights with my mom, and my mom would be like, I don't understand why you can't do this.
That's the American part of me that's failing.
I was like, I don't know. Like, I've always been more literature oriented and more
Well,
creative.
you're a very creative person. I know that. And you're very talented. And you're Christian, and so I'm sure that God is putting together, He's weaving this tapestry of your life and creating the person, that you are and the person that you're becoming. And so we won't worry about, your choices, that you're not doing it by the book.
Right.
We're going to have to take another break, and when we return, I'm going to let you share with the audience some youthful wisdom from your generation.
Sounds good.
We'll be back after this word from our sponsors.
Dr. Carol Swain's Be the People, a call to reclaim America's faith and promise, newly released in paperback and audio with a new introduction, is a challenge to all Americans. If you are serious about being the best citizen you can be, this is the book for you. From addressing moral relativism to reclaiming the future, you'll understand why Dr. Swain is one of the most relevant voices in today's culture war. Are you ready to reclaim America's faith and promise? Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
The Biden administration's executive order on immigration brings to the forefront one of the most volatile issues of our time. In this timely second edition of Debating Immigration, I join my voice to that of other experts to provide you with facts and information that will help you understand what is at stake for our nation. This edition offers 21 original essays that cover race, religion, economics, human smuggling, and civil rights.
Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
I'm back with my guest, Danielle Rae. Danielle, you're your own self. Of course, that doesn't make any sense. You're your own person. You have wisdom, even though you're young. And I'm old, I can say it like that.
I've learned a lot of wisdom from you.
What advice do you have for other young people?
Honestly, I feel like I've been very blessed and privileged to grow up the way I have, to get the right education and to not be indoctrinated. I feel like the biggest problem with my generation is compassionate, but to a fault. And the left uses that against us and says, well, if you really were compassionate, then you would care about black people. If you really were compassionate, you care about the LGBTQ community. And it's even worse when you are a Christian or you're raised in a faith home, because then it's even more like, oh, well, you must not be a real person of faith or a real Christian if you don't have compassion. And I think it's so important to be educated and to know your values and to really deepen your relationship with God. I had a mentor tell me, the pro-life movement was the whole thing that got me started in the movement. And I had a mentor tell me, Danielle, if you run this race and you are not constantly in prayer and in God's word, two things will happen. Number one, you'll get full of yourself and you'll crash and burn, or you'll run so hard that you have no more energy and you'll crash and burn. And the second thing happened to me. I didn't take that seriously and I crashed and burned. And I think it's so important to deepen our relationship with God, and for people to understand that we are going to be hated in this world because we are seekers of truth and we have truth on our side. And especially if we are Christians, we are going to be hated.
Yeah, why would anyone think that we're going to get a better deal than Jesus?
Exactly.
I mean, the Bible tells us that we'll be hated and persecuted, and to count it as joy. I've not quite learned how to count it as joy, but that's what we're told.
And I think it's super easy too, especially as conservatives, to say, you know what, screw it. Screw everybody and screw all of y'all, and to take this mean side too. And I think there's a fine balance between being abusive and being strong and bold. And that can be a hard line when you get so frustrated. And I know people who have been so screwed over and so pushed over that they're just tired, and they're like, you know what? Whatever, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be whoever I want to be. And that can be very dangerous. And I think that's why it's so important to have a close relationship with Jesus Christ and to really be in the Word. And that's something I'm trying to get better at, because I know that it's affected my life, not being in the Word. And I think mentorship is really important too for our generation, because mentorship can help guide us, and having good, wise mentors like yourself are good to keep us on the path so that we don't fall prey, because we are young, we're vulnerable, we're gullible. And so if a professor is constantly telling us, you're racist, you're a bigot, you're any of these things, then it's very easy to look at the stats they give us and say, oh, well, I guess I am, instead of being able to stay strong and to stay true to the values that we know to be true.
Well, one of the things I know about you is that you're very persistent. And like the job that you have working with me, I joke sometimes and I say that you were my stalker before you became an assistant. But you are very goal-oriented. You present yourself very well. Thank you. You have a deep sense of our society and where it's going. And what you just, the advice you just gave about the spiritual growth, that applies to me and to everyone else, because if we are believers and we're not in the Word, we're not deepening our relationship with Christ, we fall prey, and any of us can become so full of themselves. And I know that what I do, as you know, when I start doing it in my own strength, it shows, because when you're doing it in your own strength, I mean, you get tired out, you make mistakes, it's so much harder, and it's not necessarily supposed to be that way, because we're not supposed to be doing it in our own strength.
Yeah, and one of my best friends told me this, and it comes from a Bible verse where Paul talks about older men teach younger men and older women teach younger women. And she gave me a piece of advice that I've taken and tried to live out, which is everybody should have a Paul and everybody should have a Titus. Or is it Timothy? Everybody should have a Timothy. And everybody should have a Titus. So, or no, not Titus, it's Barnabas.
Okay.
Everybody should have a Paul, Barnabas, and Timothy. So, I've taken people like you and, other mentors as well for my Pauls. And I think I found my Timothy, I'm not quite sure. And then I have my Barnabases. And I think if you have your Paul, your Barnabas, and your Timothy, then that will help you keep straight. I mean, we're supposed to constantly be in fellowship. And obviously, you're an amazing person, and we talk about you, my friends and I talk about you all the time.
I'm just me.
Well, but God is using you too, and God has used you in my life to mentor me and to give me advice, even if sometimes in my own head I'm like, that doesn't sound right, but it ends up being true because you have more
Sometimes
experience.
out of the mouths of babes comes great wisdom, and so we learn from each other.
And wisdom comes with gray hairs. So.
And you also know that me personally, I get my energy from young people, but I'm not a vampire. I'm not sucking all of your energy. But, I mean, that's part of the call on my life. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to impart to your generation, I think is one of the most important things I do.
And I think it's really important. I think this is something our generation has lost. It's so important for our generation to be able to learn from your generation and to have that respect for your generation, because I think that is something we have lost, and it's going to be to our detriment. So the more we can learn from you and people like you, like Larry Elder and Thomas Sowell and all those people, the better off we'll be.
And Danielle, in the remaining time that we have, which is not much, could you tell our viewers how they can learn more about you and your platform?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I just started a vlog series because I think it's time for conservatives to come out with entertainment that's not just political. So I'm Danielle Rae everywhere. I have a website as well. It's also Real Danielle Rae.
And you're also with Blexit and Turning Point
Yes,
USA?
I am. Yes, I am. I'm an ambassador for Turning Point as well as Blexit, and Blexit has some amazing plans. I'm so excited you're involved in some of these plans, so everybody needs to keep up because it's going to be amazing.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back after this word from our sponsor.
For those of you who would like to know what exactly our children are facing in their education system, this is a must-read book. It will equip you and prepare you to make decisions about your child's health, about your child's education. So I want to encourage every one of you to grab a copy of Dr. Swain's book and join with me and Carol on the front lines in this critical time to eradicate the liberal abduction of our children.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Conversations. Danielle Rae is an amazing young woman, and there are many more like her across America. They are of all races, ethnicities, and these are people who are dedicated to America. They have the right values and principles. They are the right stuff. So whenever you despair about young people and you see the protesters and you see the Antifa and people acting like fools, remind yourself that there are other young people out there that are making a difference, that share our values, and those are the ones that will help us save America. So make sure that you follow Danielle Rae and tune in next week, and we'll have another exciting guest.